Welcome to Podshots, episode 4. In this episode, we're going to talk about space. Obviously, space is a huge topic, but what we discuss here are some of the more popular themes such as interstellar travel, singularities or black holes, alien life, and gravity. At the same time, we drink shots. It's what we do. So sit back, relax, and if you like the show, please leave us a review and a rating.
You're listening to Podshots. Tune in for our weekly boost-filled chat, where we unconventionally pair alcohol with technology, economics, pop culture, and more. With your hosts, Brandon Zamp and Clement Yu.
Yeah, let's get the official spiel for this because I don't want to mess it up. But okay. It's Bombay Gin.
It is Bombay Gin.
Which is apparently the world's leading gin, according to their website, which I don't really know if that's true.
So this, okay, folks, so we're drinking the Bombay Sapphire distilled London dry gin vapor infused. That's a long title. Yeah. It is hand selected with exotic botanicals, and it is a 1761 recipe, imported product of England. So to say this is one hell of a family gin. And they have the ingredients on the side. Should we look at the ingredients?
They do, although on their website they do go into great detail, which I won't. But let's just say this gin's been around for a while. Yeah.
Oh, it has been around for a while.
1751.
And if you look,
remember, like I was telling you earlier. Remember when I said to you when I was younger, way younger. I was like a kid. I went into my parents' alcohol store and sniffed this stuff because I was curious about everything that they had bottled up, and I picked this one. I think it was Bombay Gin. Sniffed it and like fucking didn't want to touch alcohol until I was, of legal age. Pretty much, it turned me off alcohol for good. So it's got that kind of a scent to it, that really strong scent.
Something
of gin.
About you and sniffing things, Clement. I'm gonna go get a shot glass. Hold on.
Yeah, get a shot glass. You're gonna need it.
I'm going to
because we're going to do our first shot of the podcast right now. I'm very excited to see how the sound quality comes out on this.
I'm very excited to see how my beautiful face looks when this is done.
Right. Well, there you go.
All right. So I'm going to pour this first shot of Bombay so we can get this going. I'm not excited about this because this smells wonky.
I think I'm going to do like half shots. If I'll be completely honest with you, Brandon, I don't want to go the whole 9 yards with this thing until I'm, until my body's caught up with it. So,
well, man, I'm balls deep. Let's go.
Okay. Cheers.
Tink.
Yeah. That's about right.
Oh my God.
But you know what, though? The funny thing is, though, I actually like that because the first part's very difficult to deal with, but then as soon as you let it go down, there's all of these flavors and scents that come up behind your throat.
Woo! Fuck, I hate gin.
Do you know what I mean? Did you feel that? Did you taste that? It was like a floral onslaught.
Yeah,
it's actually really
that's
nice.
Why I wanted to go over the botanicals. Juniper berries from Italy, lemon peel from Spain, coriander from Morocco, angelica root from Saxony, orris or iris root from Italy.
Where the hell is Saxony?
Grains of paradise from West Africa, hubib berries from Java, cassia bark from Indochina, almonds from Spain, and licorice from China. This is made from a lot of things, not from London.
Right. Very true. And I think that's why they call it Bombay. Something tells me that because this was 1761. So it's likely around the time that we colonized India. Hold on.
This came out before Jameson, I believe.
Yes. Yeah, Jameson was in the 1800s, I think.
Oh, yes.
So the British colonization of India was between, there you go. The British colonization of India was actually a little later than this. So this is actually before that. So I don't know. They call it Bombay. I'm not really sure why. It must be on their website somewhere. But anyway, we're doing gin.
Clement thinks he knows everything about gin because he's from, the little islands of imperialistic power from the 1700s.
Yeah, that's what we do. Yeah, gin.
Yeah, I bet this is close to home for Clement. Oh boy, I hate gin, man. I hate that taste. Well, I do like Jameson. I like Scotch. They say Scotch is an old man's drink, but I don't know. Something smooth about Scotch.
I like Scotch too. I think if there's one thing that we do well these days, that's because we no longer colonize, so we can't say, we do that well anymore. And I say we loosely because I'm not really affiliated anymore because I've been traveling for so long now. But I think Britain does do alcohol very well. Very well.
Yeah, it seems so. All right, so today's topic, since we're kind of just rambling on about alcohol, we're talking about space. We're talking about space.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Space. Space is like a very broad topic, isn't it? I mean,
it is a broad topic. It is. I mean, space is everything outside of this planet. And I don't think we really narrowed down a specific topic, but we'll kind of run through some that have been on our minds that we've kind of talked about under the table a little bit. But, space is it's a very interesting, not just an interesting place, not just an interesting concept, but an interesting thing to think about in general. It's to quote Star Trek, it's the final frontier, to be honest. I guess so.
It is. And that's one of the things that when I was doing my research for this episode, because folks, we do research before we do the podcast episodes.
Deep research.
Peer review. I was listening to an episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, and he was interviewing Ryan Cox, who's a particle scientist. And in that conversation, they did mention that, it's exciting because it is a frontier. There's no more frontiers here on the Earth. Everything's being conquered. So it is exciting to think about putting our efforts more into going to, let's say, the moon and Mars and, colonizing those places. And it is risky, and I guess that's part of the allure. But people want to know whether we can, live outside of our current means. And I think that's where a lot of the attention is going to go in the near future.
Absolutely. I did my research too. I was watching Star Talk while I was eating Doritos.
Good combination.
It's actually a really good show, good podcast with Neil deGrasse Tyson. He brings on a lot of interesting people. He interviewed Stephen Hawking before he died. And they dove into some interesting topics, and I love the way that man thinks. Always have.
Who, Neil or Stephen?
Well, both of them. I like Neil because he's a good way of explaining things. He's really good at taking a concept and making it easy for a dumb person to understand. But Stephen Hawking has a very intricate mind. It's interesting how he looks at things. Like Neil was asking him on one of the episodes what his opinion was on, if Earth was faced with calamity, do we focus on moving to another planet like Mars and forming colonies and terraforming, going through all this trouble, or just solving the problems here on Earth? And
that's a good question.
It is a good question. And you'd think the simplest answer is just, solve the problems here on Earth. But from Hawking's perspective, it was, if we stay here as a divided species and try and solve just these issues here on Earth, we'll never reach our full potential as a species.
Do you think that he meant if we go, because someone listening to this might be, and including myself, might be like wondering, well, does that mean we just let people fucking continue killing each other and dividing here on planet Earth? Or do you think what he meant was, if we do go outside and, like, let's say, for example, the frontier and try to set up a colony on Mars, that endeavor would actually bring us together more than if we just stuck around here, you know?
It's the latter on that one.
Yeah.
It's the fact that, having a common goal as a species, as humanity, to do something that's never happened before would bring us together more than anything else in our history. And
I think the irony is that we're going to have to do that at some point, because this can't go on forever.
No, it can't. We're very, very overpopulated on this planet. And in a lot of ways, we're destroying our planet, we're destroying our ecosystem, and it's just not sustainable. It's not sustainable long term. It's not healthy. It's not good. A lot of smart people, a lot of innovators and entrepreneurs, they're all looking to the stars for solutions. Like Elon Musk is one of them. Jeff Bezos is another. Looking for the possibility to actually colonize and be a multi-planetary species. Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do, but, at this rate of expansion, we need to start thinking outward and stop thinking so inward all the time.
Right, we're going to run out of resources one day. We're going to, and this whole, we're not going to talk about this in any great detail, but this whole virus is really a great example of when we come together to try to overcome a unified challenge, or at least a challenge that threatens all of us. Yeah, let's try not to let it get to the point where it becomes an urgency, like where it's imminent. Let's do it before that, hopefully.
Right.
That's the challenge, is doing it before it becomes almost too late. That's when we are usually motivated to do something, but I think that's incredibly risky strategy.
Yeah, sometimes we are too late to do things, but I think in this case with the virus, just to touch on it shortly, it is something that is in a way bringing people together to fight against a common enemy. Something that, doesn't discriminate against humanity, that kills everybody equally. It's equally terrifying across the globe. You're seeing countries work together in ways that they have never done before. And there's some finger pointing and there's some blaming, but overall, it's a pretty coordinated effort. And it'll take something like that. And it'll take common goal or common disaster we can all agree on to actually come together as a species. Because right now we exist in groups, in cliques, in countries, separate from each other, fighting each other all the time. Imagine if humanity was one world. If it was all under one, I know, if it was all under one flag, or if it was all under one ideology, we would be
United Federation of Planets. Yeah.
Yes, the United Federation. We would be a much more successful species doing a lot more. It's just we haven't overcome those small biases yet socially. That might take some more time. It also might take a push, but hopefully we get through that.
Well, I think that's where private business steps in and says, well, if it's going to be profitable, we'll fucking do it anyway. And I think that's what's happening, isn't it, with when
you privatize the space industry, that's what you get. The government pushed NASA to the point where they got to the moon, and then they kind of stopped there, and then NASA became
they beat Russia, and they were like, well, nothing left to do anymore.
And then our space industry was pretty quiet for 30, 40 years globally too. Other than satellite shit, we didn't really explore our universe or have ambitions to do that until guys like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos came around and started really pushing the envelope. Now it's a reality. I never thought it would be possible to actually land a rocket. That's pretty incredible. Being able to launch a rocket, land the rocket with precision, and reuse it is staggering. And that kind of innovation comes from entrepreneurship that comes from guys like Elon Musk, who are willing to take on the privatization of the space industry, pump the money into it, and compete too. I mean, it's like NASA was successful because it was competing against the Russians. SpaceX is very successful because it's competing against NASA, it's competing against Blue Origin, it's competing against China, who's very competitive in the space race. And, that competition breeds success. Luckily, Elon Musk is just a fucking badass, and he's done a lot of things for everybody else so far. But no, I'm excited, man. I really want to go to Mars. That would be incredible. Imagine what you could do on Mars.
It'll be possible in our lifetimes to do that with the rate of acceleration towards this goal. And the fact that they're now able to land the rockets and reuse them, I think that really opened up a whole new kind of avenue of doing this within the time frame of our lives. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm not saying I'm going to be able to go to Mars, and I might not even want to at the time. Maybe I've got a family by that time, and it doesn't make any sense. But
aren't you curious about the Martian? Aren't you curious about the Martian Tinder? The prospects of Martian Tinder.
Really. But like, if Transformers is anything to go by, it's probably just going to be a bunch of Decepticons on there. I don't know.
Who knows? It would be
going back to the whole kind of. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
So going back to the whole Russian, like the NASA, the U.S. Russian space race, I do forget often that it's difficult to say who actually won that, because Russia actually put a dog in orbit before anyone. Sputnik. They put this wild street dog that they found in the orbit of the Earth, and that was like the first time anyone had done it. But then, I think the U.S. just basically said, well, who can put someone on the moon? And then they won that race, and they were like, "Fuck, we won."
I think that was I think that was pre-animal rights.
Yeah, that was pre-animal rights, and yeah, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson was discussing this with someone, and they were like, "Well, what was that dog before it got into orbit?" And the guy was like, "Alive." So yeah, but then at the same time, I mean, like a street dog, there is an argument to be made that its life would have amounted to nothing. It would have died in the street,
there's actually a good movie about this stuff, about Neil Armstrong and when they went to the moon. What's it called? It's called Last Man. Have you seen that yet?
Ryan Gosling?
Yeah, with Ryan Gosling.
Right. Yeah, I've seen parts of it, but I was kind of going in and out of it in sleep on the flight home one day.
I watched that movie start to finish, and it's very sad what he had to go through watching his friends die in the space program, and how competitive it was, how tense it was back then, going through the Cold War and everything. And
so he was in the pressure to perform because of this political war.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, I mean, like the technology was like very brand new. Like it's like he was flying up there strapped to a rocket in a tin can. Like it's not the same kind of technology we have today that could send someone to the moon. Like what he was doing was very, very risky. And it was a lot more his mind being able to get him through that than it was, the tech they had. He didn't have a super advanced smartphone or computer or calculator you could really use. I mean, you had to do this on paper. You had to do this in your head to recalculate, to coordinate, to move around in space, and to figure out where you're going, and to make corrections. Like, it must have been incredibly intense. Like, after watching that movie, I had like a newfound respect for how difficult that must have been.
Right. And I've seen them do that. I think it was on another movie, Apollo 13.
Yeah.
And that was in that movie they were doing the calculations. They had to, I think, because something went wrong, obviously, on that mission, and they lost a lot of the control they had, and they had to calculate shit on the fly. And it was a miracle that they actually survived that. So I know what you mean. And that was even long after Neil Armstrong, wasn't it? So
yeah,
he obviously must have gone through a significant amount of stress. And having control of your own, I guess, not just your mind, not just your body, but your mind, having control of yourself in a situation like that is very respectable. I don't think many people can do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how accurate the movie was, but it seemed like they really dug into everything that happened. Like there's a point in the movie he was in space and they get stuck in like this right turn and they're like spinning out of control in space, and he's like trying to do the calculations while taking all the G's to his head at the same time. And I'm just like, God, there's no way I'd be able to do that. It's just insane what they probably had to go through just to get to the moon.
Whew. Well, if that's true, ouch.
Now, I mean, you could probably just plug in your smartphone and say, Siri, take me to the moon, and she'll do the work. You maybe could. But they do say that your phone is a lot more powerful now than the computer that got, let's say, Neil Armstrong. Oh, yeah. They say a smartphone has enough power to get you to the moon. I mean, it can do everything that giant computer they had in the modules could do. And the smartphones we have today are incredibly powerful. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if you had Apple build a spaceship and you put Siri in and you said, Siri, take me to the moon, please. She said, all right, bitch, taking you to the moon.
Like, how long is it until we get to our destination? And she's like, sorry, did you ask me for help finding out the weather on Mars? No, I wanted to know how long it's... Oh, never mind. You know what? Don't bother. But yeah, and then that brings you back to the question of, well, if the computing power is there, why don't we go to the moon more often? And I guess the answer is it's money. It takes to get
money.
Yeah,
money, and the fact that we're scared someone's going to die. Like for some reason, we prioritize the safety of a human being, going into space far more than we do letting them fly around in tin cans every single day on the freeway.
Why do you think that? Do you think that's true? Like, why would you say that?
Well, I mean, think about it. Like when you're driving and you're driving like on the freeway and there's traffic, and especially if it's somewhere like LA or New York or just people are just fucking crazy when they drive. It's amazing that more accidents don't happen, that more people don't die more often. In close proximity like that, some people could be high or drinking or pissed off or have road rage. Yet you're shooting someone in the space and there's like very little traffic up there once you get through the atmosphere. I mean, there's no resistance. You're not going to run into anything necessarily. Like, I don't see what the safety concern is other than it just being the fact that it's scary because it's space. Like, I mean, we have the technology today. Someone can pay to do it. I don't understand why we don't just fucking do it. I mean, I feel like we prioritize the concern of putting someone in a rocket a lot. But I mean, when's the last time that we've...
Okay, I think I have a theory on this. So going on what you're saying, if that's the case, I can see how that would be an issue for a private company, because a private company would have to take the responsibility of that in so far as its share and stocks and the potential future of the company and its reputation. But when it's NASA, it's like, okay, they died, right? That's really bad, but like, NASA is just a government-funded agency. I mean, what do you expect? Like, they tried their best.
But that was kind of the end of NASA. They had a space shuttle that blew up in like 2002 or whatever and killed a bunch of astronauts. That was pretty much the end of NASA going into space and doing things. That really kind of sent them downhill, and people just kind of stopped looking at the prospect of putting people on rockets anymore. But I mean, with what Elon Musk can do today, and what they have done consistently, and the precautions they can take. And as a private company, you can do a lot more. You have different freedoms than if you were ran by the government. I'll just put it that way.
What they might do first is they might go in orbit first and kind of see how that goes, and then they might take the next step. I do believe we're going to go to the moon before we go to Mars again. It wouldn't make much sense to go straight to Mars. It would make a lot of sense to practice going to the moon first.
We'll definitely probably go to the moon first, but Mars is a huge target for everybody right now. Everyone's trying to get there by 2030, maybe even within the next 10 years. I would not be surprised if we did that.
Well, I think the difference between Jeff and Elon's visions is that, and this is obviously a very rudimentary way of discussing it because I haven't really looked into that in any great detail. But from what I know, Jeff is looking at providing an infrastructure outside of the planet where we can do our industry there and leave residential on Earth. And he said that if you mine the asteroid belt, you can actually build something like 200-story high skyscrapers side by side across the entire planet with the amount of raw resources you can get from just the asteroid belt.
He's not wrong. This is a hot topic. People are trying to look at the prospect of being able to mine an asteroid because, there are asteroids out there that we have already identified that have more gold than anywhere on Earth, or that have more iron, or that have more copper, or whatever, just natural resources and extreme abundance. And if you could mine an asteroid and then somehow transport that to your local colony, you could do some incredible infrastructure and building. And it's not like there's a lack of resources out there in the universe. There's a lot of resources. In the case of Mars, it takes like 5 months to get there in the shortest period of time. With the moon, there's no atmosphere. So, you can't really terraform the moon very easily, if at all. So you'd have to build like this bubble colony. If you went to Mars, it'd take like 150 years to terraform it even enough to get it to where it needs to be. And at the same time, you have another bubble colony on Mars. All these things are possible, but you have to take into account, like, what would it take for a human to survive? And not just one human, but, 1,000, like if you want a colony, and then who's going there? The people that pay for it, the people with the best genetics, the people that are the youngest, the people that have the best trade skills. Like, what things are you going to prioritize? Is this going to be a government ordeal, or are they going to allow privatized corporations to go out and start pioneering? I think that's going to be another issue.
It's reminding me of that Ad Astra movie with Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have. It's interesting.
That really took me by surprise. Like, I wasn't expecting it to be that realistic, but it is shockingly realistic in the way that they've tackled colonizing Mars. It's like, just like you're saying, they chose to go the corporate privatized route, and they've got like, fast food joints on it, and they have like people fighting for resources and stuff. It's shockingly accurate, I think, as to how it would play out.
Mars doesn't belong to anybody. If someone lands on Mars and starts claiming land on Mars, does that belong under their nationality, under their country? Does that belong to you as an individual or to your company? That's interesting stuff to think about. It's all open frontier. It's just like if you've ever done research like on the American frontier.
Yes.
Like the natives had claim to certain lands. The pioneers were settling, building colonies on those lands. The natives and the pioneers fought violently over control of those lands. Some in the name of their tribe, some in the name of their country or their colony. Some is just individuals just building their own little log cabin and saying, this is my little piece of land. But constant like chaos and people trying to like take what everyone else has. There's just no order at that period of time. you're out in the Wild West. You're out on the frontier. There's no laws. Everything goes.
I guess the difference in this, unless we find out differently when we get there, is that the frontier in North America actually had people living there already. Yeah. And we were just like, this is mine. Your house is mine. And then now when we go to Mars, there'll be no one there unless there are little green men that kind of come out of the cracks and are like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you shouldn't even be here.
Well, if the little green men come out, that might be a bigger problem because they might be more sophisticated. And we might not be able to colonize. But
I think they have to be more sophisticated to have kept quiet all this time.
Yeah, they're hiding from us. They want nothing to do with us. And then we show up on their little red ball. And we're like, God damn it. God damn it.
All right, it's shot time, bro.
Right.
I think it's that time of the podcast. So I'm pouring mine.
Pouring up another shot of Bombay.
It's actually, it's more pretty than I thought. It's a nice turquoise or ocean blue.
Yes, it's got that nice ocean blue bottle. But I mean, it's this gin, man. I hate gin. I hate it.
You hate gin in a shot, but if you had this with, I don't know, some lemonade or something, or some soda water,
lemonade,
well, something with a citrus in it would be nice, I think. Okay, cheers.
Shoot this tink.
Wait for it. There you go. It's like an evaporation of flavor in the back of your throat.
God damn it. Why did we pick Bombay? We're going back to tequila next week.
Yeah, let's get some tequila. Some Patron next week.
We can do Patron. Fuck me in the ass. Okay. So we were talking about Mars.
Yeah. So we were talking about the frontier and how it's different, and how if we go there, at least we're not raping and pillaging living beings. But there would be a land grab for sure, and I think it would be very ferocious at that point, because let's say as soon as a company says they're actually making a trip to Mars, everyone's going to want to get on board that, and they're going to double their efforts, and there's going to be another announcement, and then within a short space of time we'll have like 3 or 4 companies there that are just like picking up all the land and making plans. So
yeah, it'd be cool to have a small business or be an entrepreneur on Mars, though. Imagine all the things you could be the first to do. Like the first.
Right. I probably wouldn't want to be the first, though. I'd probably want to be like the 5th or the 8th.
I want to be the first. It'd be awesome if you could take a trade skill there. You could be the first dry cleaner on Mars. you could have Martian craft beer. Martian craft beer. I mean, like the little things, how it'd sell incredibly well. Martian coffee, if they had a supply chain, a constant supply chain that arrived monthly, and you sent a bunch of ships to Mars back to Earth, you could have an industry on Mars, send your product back to Earth, have people buy it, and the money, could be wired back to Mars. Yeah.
Sorry, man, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Like, I really need to say this because I just had an idea that I don't know if people have thought about. But okay, so let's say you've got the need for constant refilling of resources, or tools or whatever. So one way to do it would be, and I'm not sure about the physics with this, but it could be true. One way to do it would be to just have a constant, never-ending trip of ships or vessels that are basically slingshotting around each planet's orbit. So they never actually stop. But what happens is when they get close enough, some ships will come out and dock with them. And before they've actually come out of the slingshot, they'll go back to Earth, and they'll already have had removed or put on the stock. I think that's a pretty cool way of doing it, because you'll never run out of fuel. Yeah,
essentially what you do is, there's a lot of different fuel sources that everyone's looking at. Like Elon Musk has been really focusing on like liquid oxygen and stuff like that as a resource for rockets going back and forth. Things that are very easy to make, that are very combustible and somewhat clean. But I mean, at the same time, the supply chain is not a complex issue. A lot of people think it would be. How are you going to put months worth of shit on that thing, on that rocket, and then send it, and then it still be good 5 months later? And then, I mean, you launch a supply chain. You have a ship go out every single month. No different than these giant cargo ships. It's not like we send one cargo ship to China to pick shit up and then have that one cargo ship come back. We have a huge supply chain of cargo ships constantly moving throughout the oceans, back and forth from these countries. That way there's a new cargo ship arriving every week or every month or whatever they have set up. So if you wanted a new rocket full of shit to arrive on Mars every single month, then you launch a new rocket from Earth every single month. So maybe that's 5 or 6 rockets in orbit, or not in orbit, in transit at any given time. Or something like that.
It's just going to be one long line. It's like a belt. Yeah, just ships.
It's no different than they would normally do.
Right. Very, very cool. Very cool. Really cool. So that's Mars. And then we're thinking also about, well, at the same time, how do you actually go and get out of the solar system? That's a whole different conversation.
I mean, we've sent shit out of our solar system.
Right.
Voyager, I believe. Voyager just left our solar system like a year or so ago. Turned around, took an incredible photo of what was Earth.
Oh my God, yeah. Oh, that amazing.
And then
from Saturn.
Yeah, and then they shut it down to save its battery because it was kind of venturing out to the void and they didn't really know where it was going to end up. So we have the satellite, like Voyager or whatever, just kind of out there, just flying away indefinitely, just like the Tesla Roadster.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. No, it's going to be flying for a long time. And that's another thing. I mean, so how to get from here to, let's say, the next nearest star, which would be like Vega or Proxima Centauri. Or I think those are the 2 closest stars to us, solar systems. So... And there was a movie about.
There's a way to do it. Sorry, I know you're going to say something, but I mean, I think it's Proxima Centauri, and they've talked about how they could get there, and it's about 40 light years away, something like that. Right. So if you could accelerate something up to a quarter of the speed of light, you could get there in 10 years. So, I mean, they're looking at all these solar sail options where they could send out these wafer-sized chips with cameras on them and accelerate them with lasers up to maybe a quarter of the speed of light, which is possible to do in open space in a vacuum. And then you could, if you send enough of these out there, most of them would probably arrive in Alpha Centauri in 10 years, if you do the math. So it is possible to do it.
I'm getting it wrong, but if light takes 40 years to get there from here, and if we go a quarter of the speed of light, wouldn't that mean it would be 120 years that it would take for us to get there? Or
what's a quarter of 40?
Yeah, but if it was a quarter of the speed of light, wouldn't we have to go faster? If we were going to make it in less time than it would take for light to get here, we'd have to go faster than the speed of light, right?
Maybe I did that wrong. I think I did it backwards.
Yeah, I think
but no, I remember looking at the stats. It was
so maybe it's 4 light years. I don't know. It's a lot of light years, though. It's a lot of light years away, and we can't get there with normal propulsion because it'll just take forever. And so we need to find a different way to navigate through between stars. We need to find a better form of propulsion. There's been a few kind of conversations about how we could do it, how we could create that propulsion, and the more far-fetched ones we can talk about in a moment because those are the ones that people hear the most about. Right. But the thing is, like, that's going to take a while to figure out, and we might not ever figure it out. Let's be honest. It's potentially impossible for us to do that, like potentially. So,
well, I mean, it's not impossible to send something out there. It would be very difficult to send a human, not because of the acceleration process, but because of the deceleration process. Like, if you wanted to send a human at a quarter of the speed of light, you can do that, but you have to accelerate at a rate that wouldn't put too many G's on that human. Something that, wouldn't fucking kill you or knock you out.
And you'd figure out how to slow it down as well.
Yeah, so you'd have to figure out how long would it gradually take to get a human up to a quarter of the speed of light realistically.
While putting intense pressure on their body.
Exactly. And then once you're at that speed, you're cruising at a constant velocity through space because it's in a vacuum. That's the easy part. The hard part is, how do you slow it down? You're coming up on your destination. How do you hit the brakes?
Right. If John doesn't die of a heart attack before he actually gets to a quarter of the speed of light.
You would need to set up a laser on the other end, potentially.
Yes, that's a good idea. Yeah,
if you could set up a laser system, you could probably pull this off and use some kind of solar sail. I've seen so many different ideas on this, but I mean, the fact that you're in a vacuum in space, you can get a human up to very close to the speed of light. It is possible. But the acceleration, deceleration is the issue.
I just had this memory pop in my head of watching Tron. Did you ever see the first Tron?
I've seen some of it.
They have, and it's in Legacy as well. It's like this train. They call it a train, and it has this huge sail on it. But it's on a very thin, like almost like a laser that goes from point A to point B, where it's going to actually end up. And I just thought to myself, maybe that's what they were thinking of when they were conceptualizing that, is that there's some kind of laser that's kind of pushing it along, and then the sail is what's kind of picking up. Anyway, never mind. It just popped in my head. But yeah, it sounds like a good idea. Sounds like it would be. I'm not a physicist or anything, but
it'd be cool. The other idea is that you put someone in cryogenic sleep,
right?
Which is a topic that has a lot of debate because it hasn't been perfected.
You can put them in cryogenic sleep with just conventional
long term. Well, you want to put the body to sleep. Like, there's different ways of looking at it. Like, could you freeze the body? No. If you freeze the body, you're going to burst your cells and you're going to die. You won't wake up. If you induce like some kind of coma, maybe it is possible. But I mean, it's not like you're not going to stop aging. That's the problem. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ideas, but you have to put your body in a state of dormancy. Right. So there's a lot of research being done on that, where you could put your body to sleep like you're in a coma, something like that, and then just wake up 100 years later in your same young body. Hopefully, like that's the idea. If you could do that, and then you could potentially just program an AI to run your ship or whatever, and just take you wherever you want to go, and just manage it that way.
It's David from Prometheus.
Yes. I would be a little worried if it was David. But
I would not be like Michael Fassbender's just like there on the ship, and you're like, what the fuck are you doing here, man? He's like, I'm just joking. I'm just here for a laugh. They paid me to come and scare you.
It'd still scare me anyways. I'd want him off the ship.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you seen
Peter Hernandez was saying that they're already, he's already frozen his sperm. I think he's frozen his sperm or something in cryogenics. So there's already companies that exist that are doing this for other means, and I think it just has to trend a bit to the next level.
Well, it's not like we couldn't send our DNA or sperm or eggs somewhere, but if you're talking about a human body, it's far more complex. And you have cells in the human body that just can't handle being frozen like that will burst under that pressure. Because they're filled with water. When you freeze water expands. That water is going to burst those cells and you're going to die. So you can't just put yourself in a freezer and come out in 100 years. You have to do it in a very controlled way. It's not impossible, but it's going to take a lot more research and a lot more development before we're at that point. Once we are, and then you could just say, Siri, take me to Alpha Centauri, and she'll be like, all right, we'll be there in approximately 500 years. Have a nice sleep, something like that. You'll have a nice dream and everything, and then you'll wake up.
I think that's one thing people who are listening to this need to realize is that even though a lot of conversations happening about interstellar travel, it may be that we never get to see anything arrive at its destination in our lifetime because it is literally that far away. So unless we come up with some genius concept of improving or reducing the time it takes to get between stars, we're really probably not going to see much at all happen in our lifetime.
Even if you live to be like 120 years old, and let's say they arrived, do you know how long it would take for a message to get back?
Yeah, right, exactly.
So you probably still die. So if you're young and you have that opportunity, the odds are in your favor to just fucking go with them. Like if you stay on Earth and hope that you can witness it actually happen, you're not going to. It's very unlikely. You're better off if you want to see that happen in your lifetime to sign up and just go. I mean, that's my opinion.
Hey, here's an interesting thing. Okay, what would happen? Because like you just touched on how long it would take for communication, radio communication, to get back and forth
at light speed,
the ship and us. Like, what would happen if you kept an open transmission between Earth and the ship from the moment it left the planet to the moment it landed? That would be real time, correct?
Yes. Yes.
You would never break contact, so it would never have to travel that distance because it's already traveling that distance.
Yeah.
But I guess the challenge is keeping an open channel.
When you send a message, you're sending a beam of information at the speed of light. So it depends on, how far you are. If you're 100 light years away, it'll take you 100 years at light speed to send a message.
Right. No, but I'm just
thinking, can't go faster than that based on relativity. You can't go faster than the speed of light. So you have to assess the possibility that, if you... Here's the other issue. Thing that worries me the most is, let's say we want to go to Alpha Centauri, and can't remember how far it is, but let's say it's 40 light years away.
Right.
It takes 40 years for light from Alpha Centauri to reach Earth. How do we not know that it hasn't blown up yet?
Yes. I think you would have to do what I suggested, which is to keep an open transmission, because you're already waiting that long. And I think that's why it would be real time, because it's transmitting at a rate that's free, like it's just constant. So 10 years later, you would receive the 10-year transmission, which is fine because that's real time. But if you waited for 10 years to start the transmission, it would be 20 years later when you'd receive the 10-year transmission.
Right, but it wouldn't matter if there was a catastrophe, though. That's the problem. So, like, if you waited 10 years to get that 10-year transmission, you could find out that, 10 years ago it blew up. So all the work we did for the last 10 years has been for nothing.
Like a daily, maybe a daily ping would be what they do.
Well, the daily ping would be 10 years late every ping.
No, not necessarily, because if you think about it, so you do a ping when you're taking off. You do a ping, it's instant. You do a ping when you're leaving the orbit, it's instant, pretty much.
Well, it's instant at the speed of light, so you have to go by that factor. So whatever ping you send takes 10 years. So even if it's instant, it'll be instantaneous, but it'll be 10 years behind.
That's actually like what would happen if it was just a constant stream of transmission.
I mean, the constant stream will be constantly 10 years behind schedule.
It would get warped over time. It would become stretched, I think. That's interesting. Oh my God. Wow, we're really diving into that.
Okay, Clementine-stein.
Clementine-stein.
Yeah.
But then the more, obviously, I guess the more discussed forms of propulsion that would get us anywhere faster are wormholes and black holes. And I've been doing a lot of research on both of them. I'm pretty sure you have too.
Mm-hmm. Want to talk about black holes?
We can talk about black holes, yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about
the singularity, we call it. Different to the singularity from the last episode, which was the technological singularity. But this singularity is where space basically like all fucking comes to a head and is infinitely dense, which is the center of this implosion of a star. Essentially, is what a black hole is, and it's like an infinitely dense point in space-time. Where
is it a hole?
It's a hole in the sense that
this is where people like get really lost and confused when you start talking about space.
The way that I understand it is it is of such a density and mass that it's able to sustain itself. And without going into too much physics, because I'd probably fuck up, it's able to sustain itself. So it's able to be there as a constant. And the thing is, it's got so much gravity because it's so dense, and it's like think about it like tons and tons of planet-sized objects just squashed into the same space.
We forget often that our universe exists in more than just our own three-dimensional space. Once you start thinking outside of the three-dimensional space, you start understanding things a little bit better. Take a black hole for existence. A black hole is not a hole in 3 dimensions. So if you had a piece of paper, like a plane, in 2 dimensions, the premise of a black hole is that you could go from point A to point B on the paper instantaneously, right?
That's a wormhole.
Yes, but that's also the concept of a black hole too.
They don't know, but yeah, okay, fair enough. So we don't know. It could be a channel through from 2 points in space.
Right, but from the premise of what we believe a black hole is, most people believe that a black hole functions in the same way that a wormhole does, and that they're indistinguishable. Because you don't look into space and see wormholes. A wormhole is a concept, but a black hole is a real thing. And when you look at a black hole, it's, a black hole can be a wormhole. A wormhole can't be a black hole, if that makes sense. Because there is no worm floating around in space going through holes. Like, there's no wormhole. Like, it's
also got no mass. So it's like, it's not actually it doesn't have any gravity. A wormhole is literally just a rip in space time.
Right. And that's what many people think a black hole is too.
Right. And the truth of the matter is, and this is really not this is not really up for conjecture, because it's just the honest fact is that no one knows what lies beyond that outer circumference of the actual.
But this is why they think a black hole is a wormhole. The premise of a wormhole is that if you had a piece of paper. You had a plane, a piece of paper, and you wanted to go from point A to point B on that piece of paper in a 2-dimensional plane. If let's say you wanted to create that shortcut with a wormhole, you would fold that paper, right?
Yes.
And now you could go from point A to point B instantaneously if you went through a hole.
Because they're superimposed, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now that's on a 2-dimensional plane. So in a 3-dimensional plane, what would a hole look like?
Mm-hmm.
A hole
like a sphere.
Like a sphere. So
right, and if you pushed Interstellar.
Right. Interstellar actually explains that concept very well and makes a lot of sense out of it. So a wormhole in premise would be a sphere in 3 dimensions in our 3-dimensional world. So a black hole that's 3-dimensional, that essentially sucks in everything, including light, and we have no idea where it pops out, is a pretty good indicator that a black hole very well might be a wormhole, since it's probably ripping through the fabric of space.
It could be. Yeah, it really could be. I think it's got the potential to do that. But the thing is, this is what a lot of physicists are kind of like saying that will most likely be the case, is that once you see, because as soon as you get to the what they call the event horizon, which is the outer circumference of this sphere, is that you will be pulled in, and all of your future trajectory, all points of your future, like end in the center of that mass, because there's no way you can escape. It's physically impossible to escape that. It's the most terrifying thing in the universe, apparently, is that the pull of the black hole. So they basically say, yeah, it could be, but you probably would never live to figure it out, because you'd be reduced to like less than atoms of space.
Well, the reality is a black hole is working on a dimensional plane that we're not familiar with, and it's not something a human has ever experienced and would experience and potentially live to tell the story. We have no idea. We can't just send Sputnik into a black hole and have him come back out and tell us what happened.
How would you? Well, so you'd have to try to figure out how to keep in contact with the space.
Like the only way anyone's gonna understand how a black hole works is when someone goes into a black hole. I mean, yeah, you'll probably die going through a black hole, but I mean, at the same time, we don't know that. We really don't know. We don't know what happens when you go through it. All we know is that the premise behind it is the gravitational pull is incredibly powerful. It's very loud. It makes a unique sound. And based on how we think a black hole works, you would be stretched in halves until you were broken down into atomic particles and then squeezed through a hole. But I mean, it would be a gruesome death if that's how it actually worked.
There's gotta be a better way. No, but it was really great how they conceptualized that travel between points in Interstellar. It was really cool. That was my favorite ever depiction of a black hole in any movie. It just looked so realistic and so beautiful. And I highly recommend, if anyone hasn't seen that movie, that they got to go and watch it just for that scene alone when they go through the black hole. It's beautiful. Yeah. It's truly beautiful.
Interstellar is an interesting movie because they really, almost the entire movie is on point. There's very little about that movie that isn't on point. And there are some things that seem like kind of out of character that don't make sense. Like when they went to that one planet and it was like covered in water.
Oh God, yeah, that was so frustrating. Oh my God.
Covered in water. Well, people probably seen this movie already. But there's this one planet and they have like these constant like tsunamis and whatnot. I remember some people were like going back and forth on the fact that didn't make sense and that wasn't scientific. How could you have constant tsunamis like that? I was listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about it and a few other people, and they're like, well, actually, it does make sense because, these aren't tsunamis. Like, you got to remember that there's a giant black hole creating artificial gravity for this planet, and waves are created by the planet moving, not waves themselves. So when a wave washes up on the shore, it's because the planet's moving and shifting, rotating.
Yeah, I think there's ways that they could kind of...
The massive waves that they had in that movie were just normal waves.
One other thing, now that you're touching on the kind of like the inconsistencies with real life, is when they travel to the planet where Matt Damon's character is, and they're going through the atmosphere and they hit a cloud and it's frozen. And I was like, wow. And I immediately went on, because I'm that much of a nerd, I went on Google and I searched for, is it possible to have frozen clouds? And the answer apparently is yes, although the pressure of the atmosphere would have to be greater than the pressure at the bottom of the ocean on our planet. So you would literally be squashed alive if you were on that planet, which is why I didn't, I kind of spotted that, but I was like, it's a movie, let them have it, right? I mean, you got to make it interesting. Although I didn't think that was an essential part of that planet. I think if they didn't have that, it would have been just as interesting to me, but
God, it'd be tough to say for sure. But I mean, it's one of those things, I think, if you dug into it deep enough, you could probably come up with a conclusion that would make sense. There's so much that goes into the chemistry of a planet, the atmosphere of a planet, especially these extremophile planets. It'd be very interesting to see someone's scientific take on that based on these movies.
And this is kind of coming into another kind of another thought, right?
Yeah.
If we made a movie for Hollywood that was so realistic that there were no kind of visible issues with the physics in it, it would be boring as fuck, probably.
It could be.
It would probably be boring as fuck unless you were into that kind of stuff, in which case probably wouldn't be boring. But to the average moviegoer, they would be expecting noises in space, which is one of the things that movies struggle with, is like you can hear the thrusters of the ship outside in the vacuum of space, which is impossible.
Well, have you seen Gravity with Sandra Bullock?
I have seen that. Yeah.
That movie's very simplified. All they are in is an orbit. Everything in that movie is pretty in line with how physics works. And there is no sound. You get outside space, you don't hear anything. I mean, it's very realistic. But that movie's very intense, and I'm just like, Jesus, if I was in her position and I was floating away in space like that while George Clooney was singing a song, I think I'd lose my mind. I don't know. That movie was very realistic, but was also very intense at the same time. I think it really depends on how you create the story for the movie and how you portray it. I mean, if you just did a movie about someone going into space and then coming back, that'd be pretty fucking boring. Like, if nothing goes wrong, there's nothing climactic happening, then it's a boring movie.
It is. It's one of those things that I try to understand, like as a moviegoer and as someone who's interested in realism. I've always been interested in realism over anything else. Like, I used to do art when I was in school and I was growing up, and I did art for one of my A levels, which is in the UK is like a college kind of qualification. So anyway, I did art, and I never tackled cartoon style stuff, even though I really liked it. I always went for more of the realistic stuff. I went for artists. I was interested in artists that did realistic work. But, and so I've always been drawn towards it. And I struggle to understand sometimes why movies that are marketed as realistic, and they're trying so hard to be realistic, and I'm not talking about space-related movies necessarily, just any movie, but then they bring out like a tablet, or like there's a laptop, and there's text going across the screen, but it's going. Nothing in the world does that unless you've got a really kind of funky programmer who kind of created that. Nobody will have a program where the text makes noise when it goes across the screen. But in Hollywood, it does. And I kind of struggle, and I try to understand. It's probably because it gets more people's engagement after tests. I don't know.
All right. I think it's time for a shot. I think we're about an hour in. I think it's time.
I've had mine ready for a while.
Okay.
So.
Well, mine's poured. I'm ready to go. I'm not going to.
Okay. Cheers.
All right. Tink.
This is nothing against Bombay Sapphire. I mean, it's a really nice drink.
There's nothing wrong with Bombay, guys.
There's nothing wrong with drinking.
I'm going to cry. I'm going to cry on camera.
All the drinks we've had so far have been fantastic alcohols. It's just the mode of consumption that we've chosen is incredibly difficult.
Guys, gin is nothing wrong with gin. I just don't like gin. This is a good brand. Go check out Bombay Sapphire. It's fantastic. It does have an interesting taste. It probably is smooth over the rocks, which I'll try later and see if that makes a difference. But my God, man, I don't like gin. I'm a tequila guy, and I think
with soda water in there, it really changes the way it kind of changes the way you.
What do you think I am? Some kind of gypsy? Throw a little soda water in there, mix in some gin, and you'll be good. Yeah. What else should I do? Cast a spell?
Yeah, just summon your leprechaun and do a chant together.
I feel like this is something like Harry Potter would drink at Gryffindor. Ron, pass the gin.
How do we go from here? I was actually bringing up. I was bringing up a movie that was done quite I think 1992. It's called Contact. It's got Jodie Foster.
Oh yeah, I like Contact. It's a good movie.
Fucking great film. That basically sold me on science fiction. Even more than
that movie really did a good job of exploring how the world would react to something like that.
Yeah, how people think.
Exactly. And I really enjoyed how they explored the concept of religion and how that fit into everything.
Right.
And I know that we're not going to really dive into religion deeply on this podcast, but I thought it was very interesting how you could take the prospect of, potentially finding life out there in the universe and still finding a way to hold on to God at the same time, to whatever you believe in religion. And I thought there's some interesting parallels, and I think that movie did a very good job of walking that line carefully and perfectly without making someone upset.
I mean, no one knows for sure, and that's the problem with that a lot of people have with kind of reconciling religion if they're of a very kind of scientific if they're of a very scientific makeup to begin with, is that no one can really prove it or disprove it. What you can prove, though, is that the universe has existed for a long time, and you can prove that because we can see light from 13.8 billion years ago. So that's basically the Big Bang right there. So we know that there was light way, way, way back before the Book of Genesis. But you can't disprove that there's a God. So yeah, it is tricky in that sense. But I did really find it super eye-opening, and it was such a creative movie, the way that they dealt with the experience that she had with the alien species on that planet after going through a wormhole. It was not a black hole, which is the difference is one's got a fucking shit ton of mass and it will kill you instantly, probably if you go through it. And the other one is a wormhole, which is literally just a rip in the fabric of space-time. Right. And that's what she went through when they kind of created that contraption.
Yeah, I loved that movie when I was a kid. It's fantastic. I used to watch it all the time on VHS.
I loved it. And the thing is, I couldn't talk about it to anyone because no one in my circle of friends, at least in school, and I had a small, it wasn't a big school, it was a decent-sized school. No one was really into that kind of stuff. I felt like very much an outlier when it came to my hobbies, my passions. So I didn't talk about science fiction that much. But the guy who did the consulting for that movie, his name is Kip Thorne, and he's like an expert on gravitational waves. So he understands a lot about black holes because they're just huge centers of gravity, like you said, and they distort space and time. And they were like, we want to have this. We want to have this scene where she goes into a black hole, and he was like, no, don't do that. She'll die. Let's use a wormhole instead. So they used the wormhole, and then, funnily enough, he was actually one of the people who consulted on the script of Interstellar, and then met with the producers and got it kind of like fast tracked. So he's been involved with two of the best science fiction movies ever, and all to do with interstellar travel, I guess.
There's a really good, there's a bunch of spoofs on some of these movies, including Contact in Rick and Morty. I don't know if you've gotten around to actually watching it yet, but my God, that shit is funny because they'll break down like popular movies and everything, like Contact, for example, and interweave them into like the context of the episodes.
Oh, okay. You've sold it to me now. Like you should have told me this before. I'll definitely watch it. No. Is Rick and Morty the one that has Bob Odenkirk in it, the voice?
I don't know.
Because he's the guy from Better Call Saul from Breaking Bad. He's the really funny dude, the lawyer.
I don't watch Breaking Bad.
The voice of like.
But they troll so many movies. It is hilarious. And they interweave them into like the context of like whatever the story is in each episode. And Rick is like this drunk scientific grandpa who's like a genius, who has the ability to travel between all over space and between dimensions, all these different crazy places. And then his like grandson Morty goes on adventures with him. It's really good. If you haven't seen it yet, you're missing out on so much. It's so funny.
I'm gonna check it out.
And they just then season 4 just came out too.
Oh, okay. I was wrong. The actor that does both Rick and Morty, believe it or not, is the same guy. Mm-hmm. His name is Justin Roiland. So, yeah. Interesting.
No, it's awesome, man.
I like how adult cartoons kind of go back in time to stuff that we grew up with, and they kind of pull them apart. Like Family Guy does Star Wars. They did a whole show on basically Star Wars spoof, which I found quite interesting. And then The Simpsons do a bunch of stuff as well. I think they did Aliens once because they're part of Fox as well.
Yeah. Well, they have this like constant like creation of like these cartoon family sitcoms almost. What Rick and Morty does though is it like trolls that. So it like takes the cartoon family sitcom of The Simpsons or of Family Guy or American Dad or whatever, and it like destroys it. Like Rick Sanchez coming back into his daughter's life ends up disrupting their marriage between her and her husband, and they start going through divorce.
Oh my God.
And they have two younger kids that are have all these problems. So like on top of like all the science adventure shit they do, they have all these family issues, and it's just absolutely hilarious because it's like in some ways paralleling like the American family problems that you would see today at the same time. So like it's got this interesting twist.
I don't even need to live there to be able to relate to a lot of this stuff. Like one of my favorite shows ever is Modern Family. And unfortunately they had their last episode like a couple of days ago, or at least they finished filming it. And I was like, gee, that's the end of an era. It's like 11 years or something that they've been filming that show. So some of these are just huge shows. I think The Simpsons, though, without kind of going into this in too much detail, but The Simpsons is the one that's the longest lasting, I think, the longest lasting cartoon sitcom.
Yeah, it's the oldest, but it's the thing with The Simpsons is it goes through these periods where, you know, you have people writing that are really good, and then you have people that are writing that aren't really good. So like some stretches of seasons are like incredible, and then other stretches of seasons kind of suck. Right now, The Simpsons kind of sucks. It's not as creative as it used to be, but you know, at some point, if they really want to keep it going, Fox does, or I guess Disney at this point, since they own the 20th century, they'll put someone in there that's a good writer, that's funny, a good comedian, and you know, it might come back. You know, Simpsons is not dead. It's kind of boring. But
yeah, it's like a brand that needs revitalizing. Maybe.
Yeah, it just needs someone else writing, and they do that every once in a while. You know what show is incredible is South Park, to be honest. Every time you think South Park is done and they've done everything, they find another way to just fucking rock the world and surprise you, and it's just fucking hilarious.
22 seasons. Okay, it's closing in. I mean, well, it's not really closing in because, well, unless they have less episodes per season. But anyway, it's got a lot of seasons. 1990.
Yeah, it does.
1997. So The Simpsons was like 1980 something. Hold on, Simpsons.
Yeah, Simpsons is old. I can't remember what year, but I've been watching The Simpsons since I was a little kid.
Yeah. The thing about these shows is that the characters never get, well, no, that's not true. Oh my God, I remember I was watching an episode of The Simpsons from the most recent season just to see how it is. Mm-hmm. And Marge sounds so old now. She does.
Yeah, but she doesn't look old.
She doesn't look old. She's the only one out of the whole cast that sounds like she's aged. I don't know what she's been doing, or I don't know what the rest have been doing. But Bart sounds the same. Lisa sounds the same. Maggie just sucks on her.
I'm kind of wondering when they're going to hit puberty.
We should see them in real life. They're like old women.
Have you seen the Simpsons movie?
Yeah, I think I saw like half of it, but I didn't watch the whole thing because I got bored.
That movie's so fucking funny. Literally, the solution for a town that's polluting and destroying an area is to put a dome around the town.
Oh fuck yeah! No, I've seen that.
So they put a dome around Springfield, and then after a certain period of time, they start running out of basic supplies. And I was thinking about that. I was like, oh my god, that's how I feel like in quarantine. It's like day 14 under the dome. Now we're running low on everything from coffee to Botox.
I would not be surprised if there are like micro industries being born of just regular people going around doing things for other people. Even though that's probably not a good idea, and I don't recommend that, but I wouldn't be surprised.
What do you mean by that?
Like haircuts, for example. I mean, Jesus, how long am I going to be able to do this for?
Dude, my hair, I gotta show the camera. My hair is crazy right now. Like, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know what to do with this. Like, I've been debating like whether to cut it myself, and I'm like, I know I'm gonna fuck it up if I try and cut it myself. So I'm just letting it grow out.
What I do, and I think this is my strategy for this, is I'm gonna start with the sides and the back, and I'm just gonna kind of try to get it shorter there and see how that looks. And if that looks good, I might try to go a little bit further, but I'm definitely not going to start with the top.
You know, worst case scenario, you could shave everything off now and start from scratch, and by the time quarantine's over, you might have a normal head of hair.
Yeah. No, I think you would. No, you'd have more than normal. You'd have a normal head of hair. I think we're going to be here for a while, bro.
This is so far removed from space.
We're basically going to be a group of beings that have huge psychological, emotional issues at the end of this.
I got one for you. Let's say you're in space and you're in transit somewhere, let's say to the moon, and you need a haircut. And you cut your hair, or have someone cut your hair. Wouldn't all that hair just scatter everywhere?
Not unless you had that vacuum thing that I showed you the other day.
I don't know if that's a popular item. It looks old too.
Didn't sell. I haven't seen one of those ever. So,
but how would you cut someone's hair in the vacuum of space? Like every single blade of hair, wouldn't that just go flying everywhere? And then wouldn't you be living in like a fuzzball?
Well, you'd have to have a vacuum in the vacuum. You'd have to have.
How?
Never mind. Sorry, that was a bad. So you'd have to have something to suck the hair up. That's the only way to do it. But yeah, it would be really annoying. It would get everywhere. Even with the vacuum, it would probably stick to the hands of the hairdresser. It would stick to it would stick to the walls. It wouldn't be nice. Yeah. I wonder how they do it.
I wonder how they do a lot of things in space, to be honest.
How to cut your hair in space.
Do you think any of these astronauts have ever gotten funky in space with each other?
Yeah, I think so. I think that there, in the space station, for example, there's more than one. There's quite a few rooms and kind of places you could go to kind of get it on.
But wouldn't the temptation of that just be like impossible not to do it? Like if you were a male and there was a female in space, and you're both fairly attractive, and you're up there for a while in a closed space, and you're working out. You can smell each other's sweat across the space station. She's flinging an apple from one side to the other.
It might be your co-mate's sweat that you kind of zone in on. John, what are you doing here? Oh, nothing.
That'd be terrible, man.
Well, think about the current quarantine that we're going through. I think this is the most I've ever seen people get horny.
That's true.
Openly. It's insane. I've I've just not seen it before. It really is sad that we're going through this withdrawal symptoms. But yeah, put yourself on a space station for probably an even longer amount of time. I guarantee you that there's been some hanky-panky going on up there.
Probably. I'd be surprised if no one hasn't done that yet. Because that's like a huge milestone.
Who knows? Maybe it was even sanctioned at one point. So
I know that they've kind of asked astronauts this stuff, and they refuse to admit that they have or have not because it's not a professional thing. So even if someone has, officially, I don't think anyone has. So I mean, like officially, I think we're a virgin species in space, but like unofficially, I think it has happened.
Oh yeah, come on. I mean, it gets lonely, man. It gets lonely on Earth. It must get really lonely in space.
Yeah, sucking on all that toothpaste with 3 other dudes and that one chick who's just super smart.
I think, you probably at some point you start to lose. I think you probably go through waves of having control of your emotions. So,
you know what I'd be worried about is if my wife was an astronaut and she went up into space for months on end with a group of other dudes stuck in the space station, I'd be incredibly nervous. And if I was her...
Yeah, but at that point, you're going to have to write it off. Like, you're going to have to basically stop thinking about it because there's no way you're going to know. And it's probably going to happen. So you're just going to have to stop.
It is probably going to happen. Think about it. It's like you saying that you have a wife or a girlfriend or a significant other, and she's stuck in quarantine with 4 other jockeys.
Bro.
I mean...
We have our needs. We have our needs. And I am in no way condoning cheating, but I do believe that given the opportunity and given the
it's
situation.
Sad though. I mean, don't you think that's a little sad? Like, I mean,
well, I wouldn't say it happens every time though.
I think it happens more than we think though. I mean, I don't think it matters whether you're a woman or a man, but I mean, if you're put in that situation, you know, I feel like there's so many. I think there's so many relationships that are under stress or being ruined right now because of situations similar to that. Right.
Oh, yeah, it's human nature, isn't it, to want to be intimate, and some people are able to control it, and some people aren't. But I think that the more you this is the thing, and this is like we're talking about relationships now, but. but if you, at the end of the day, it all boils down to trust, I think. And if you really trust your partner, you won't think twice about it. And even if it does happen, and you don't find out about it, at least you are not. Your trust is not compromised. I know this sounds weird, but this is how I think about it. I think cheating happens a lot more than people realize. But a lot of times it goes without being noticed, and nothing changes. Nothing changes. They still continue in a relationship. They're still happy. They still have kids that they need to parent, and life goes on. And I think that, sometimes if you don't know what happened, it's better.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it also depends on what you define as cheating, too. I know this is getting away from space again, but,
Yeah, but it's part of the whole space travel conundrum. Like,
yeah, but I mean, like, what do you consider cheating? Pornhub? Talking to somebody else? What do you consider cheating? Like, where does that? I think we should save this almost for like a relationship episode of the podcast.
The next one. Let's talk about relationships on the next one, perhaps.
Yeah,
we'll talk about it. But
we're building you guys up. We're building you guys up for one hell of a relationship episode.
Right. And maybe we even get a lady to come on too, so that it's not too.
That'd be interesting.
That would be really interesting.
I could get a lady to come on that'd be down.
Yeah. We should try it out. Let's see what happens. But definitely a lot of potential conversation there, for sure. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think we exhausted space pretty well, at least for.
I think we exhausted what we can talk about when it comes to space, because I think there's so much to talk about on space. I don't think you'd ever be able to talk about all of it. So I think we kind of exhausted our knowledge base on this.
Yeah, there's probably more we could have talked about, but I think for this episode, this is a good amount of things to think about.
Yeah, man, I think this is a great one. Should we do one more shot to close it out? We've done 3. Yeah. Want to do one more? Make it 4?
Yeah. What people don't realize is this bottle, after the show, I mean, it usually gets finished on my side.
You know, this bottle's fairly full too.
Oh, I have a smaller bottle. You can't see it because we're recording separately. But
well, I mean,
I purposefully bought a smaller one.
I don't know, guys. Is this a small bottle? Big bottle? I don't know. You tell me. But I mean, this is the biggest one I can find.
Because you bought that when I was on live with you. I think that you bought the bigger bottle.
Oh shit! I don't know. I had a little last night, and then I poured 4 shots so far, and it's barely breaking the brim here.
So what's the milliliters that it has? Mine's 350 mils.
Mine's 500 milliliters.
Well, there you go. Yours is a bigger bottle.
Got 500 milliliters, folks. All right. Cheers. Tink.
Yeah, you're like a Japanese guy right now. It's at least it's nice on the back end of it, you know. If it wasn't nice on the back end of it, it would be very hard to drink this. But
guys, next time we're definitely gonna do a sake. We're gonna do something crazy exotic. We're gonna do sake. I don't want to do fucking gin again. Not for a while.
Sake is one of those ones that are pretty easy to drink sake, isn't it? Like,
yes, I've had sake. Yeah,
and we also could do soju as well.
We could do soju. Anything but this gin. God, I hate gin. Gin, and some of you guys are gonna think I'm crazy for a guy to say this, but gin and whiskey. I don't like whiskey. There are some select whiskeys I will drink, but I don't like whiskey, guys. I'm telling you.
On.
I'm a tequila guy.
What are you talking about? You just told me that you like Irish Jameson, and
it's different. That's different, my friend. There's a difference between a Scotch and fucking Jack Daniels.
Oh, I mean the bourbon kind of whiskey.
Yeah, and get into those bourbons and shit. I can't do that. I hate them so much. I hate the taste.
Right, I don't really like them either. The malt ones, the malt bourbons. Yeah,
you know,
it's weird.
Depending on how expensive it is, I can drink it. You know, because the flavor's better and it's better over ice. But I really don't like whiskey.
I definitely, if I'm drinking whiskey, I definitely prefer drinking British whiskey.
Shivers, man.
And Japanese whiskey too is very nice.
Maybe
Yamazaki, those kinds of, you know, the Suntory ones are actually
We'll try some of those out. And if, you know, you guys in the audience, you have some recommendations for us, things to drink, you should definitely just throw it in.
Definitely.
Right into the comments, man. Tell us what the fuck we should get plastered on.
You know, I have a feeling eventually we're going to get listeners that are actually running their own, artisan alcohol cellars, refineries, whatever you want to call it. And I think that we should do theirs. We should taste theirs, give them some exposure.
Yeah, we definitely can. We'll taste a lot of different things over these numerous episodes that we're going to do every single week. So one at a time, one bottle at a time.
One at a time.